Hello, how's everybody doing? This is Scott Elliott. I'm the artistic director of the new group, and welcome to our Why We Do It conversation series, where we hook up with some of our artists to talk about, what we're all going through as artists in this moment, and to reminisce and, talk about some old times and old projects and future projects. I have to do a little housekeeping. We have a couple of things going on at the moment. We have our climate reading series, which has been on for the past couple of nights and is going on this week. And you should check it out. They're pretty amazing. I'm so impressed with the work that's coming through, even on Zoom. Last night's reading really was amazing. So I hope you check that out. And next week, we have our reunion benefit reading of The Spoils by Jesse Eisenberg. There it is right on your screen. That's a benefit to benefit the new group. I hope you all come check it out or buy a ticket and see it. We did The True with Edie Falco last week, Char White's play with Edie Falco, and that came off great. I loved watching it, and we had a nice rehearsal for The Spoils, and it was really fun being back with this great gang. So come check it out. And now we're going to get right into our conversation with, one of my favorite people, Tony-winning designer, professor, I don't know, father, mother, all of that.
All of it.
Clint Ramos, yes. Here he is.
Hi.
Hi, Clint. What's up?
Just doing the
Doing the COVID thing.
Doing everything, doing the most.
Yeah, you are. You're busy. That's good, because in this moment, I guess a lot of the stuff that you can do, with your teaching, you can do remotely. But I'm just, I looked at this before. I'm looking at your setting, which of course looks like the setting of a set designer's home. It's so cute. You're up in your cabin up there with your family, and you're enjoying.
I am in a cabin in the woods. I'm in Berkshire County, otherwise known as the original territory of the Mohicans.
Nice, of course. Great. I would expect nothing less. And I'm loving seeing you here. So you guys are, doing the family thing up there. How's that going? You're all.
We were the first ones to evacuate. I have a sister who used to live in Hong Kong, and she was like, "Yo, it's."
Get out.
Yeah, get out. Face masks, face shields, everything. Do it. Like, and that was like, remember that time when they were like, don't wear masks. And yeah, so we did the most. I took my daughter out of school a week early, and we just went up here, and we've been here ever since. We've created sort of like pods with friends, some work friends who have come up here, and we see a few people. But yeah, no, we've been up here since March.
Wow. And what's that done to your creative brain? Has it expanded it, or has it? What's it done?
I mean, it's still a mess, as you know. It's been great. But I think one of the things that was really great was like, I was able to spend a lot of time, and I am still spending a lot of time with my family and my daughter, and just like really absorbing that. And luckily also the cohort that I belong to at Fordham were really action oriented. And when this thing came down, we started planning for the coming school year. I mean, we're not done, but we were kind of the first ones to really sort of say, hey, then what does this look like? What does our practice look like? What does the pedagogy look like? All of that stuff.
And have you? Right. And so, I mean, that's really smart. Has it evolved a lot and changed a lot as the world has changed? Like, yeah.
It's transformed into many things, and what the priorities are. I think right now a lot of the conversations is like, with the COVID sort of safety measures, is like also like this really fast reckoning about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And I think it's at least in the university level, it's taking equal priority right now. We don't know what the universities is ultimately gonna do. This week we found out that we can teach completely online, and we'll see what there's a bunch of stuff that's happening that the university's addressing in terms of ED&I.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, you're a spokesperson for that in our community as well, which is, it's proud to know you. Always pushing it forward.
Listen, like this is the time. People are listening. You know what I mean?
Well, I agree. I mean,
also, how can we ignore what's happening out in the streets?
It's true.
I was talking to a colleague, and literally, I'm not going to say who, but who it is. And we were talking about like equity, diversity, and inclusion in that particular institution that colleague runs. And
I know who it is. Okay, go ahead.
But I don't. And literally, there was a rally down on the street. You know what I mean? Like, so. It's time. It's like
it is time. It is time. It is time. And I know I for one am thrilled to learn from you, and having learned from you over all these years. You've been in my life and have pushed me in all sorts of directions. I like to think we both played that role for each other in certain ways.
I remember this. I think one of the first conversations we had was like when I think a lighting designer asked me, I think in front of you, and I don't remember what the right context was, but like, and the lighting designer said, "So what's the color palette of the show?" And mind you, it was like the shop show, right? Like it was like a shop show, and just like an utter like craziness. I was like, I don't believe in color palettes, and you were like, who's that freak over there who's not believing in color palettes? and then you were like, oh my God, I don't believe in color palettes. And it's like, and maybe Scott, maybe that's the first kind of like anti-racist thing that we did together.
It might have been.
Come to think of it, the dismantling of the color palette.
I was never into it. That's what always attracted me to like, certain people that I work with. It's like that whole thing of, I think you and I have always been on the same page as far as that goes in many ways, I think.
Yeah.
But hey, we've known each other a long time. I remember, I think I met you when you were a student, and I had just sort of started directing. It was pretty early, and we met at the gym.
At the David Barton.
That's right, but the old David Barton.
Yes,
on 16th Street.
Right, where
they
called it Dolly Parton, remember?
I do remember, and I found you so charming, and I was like, look at this guy's in school. I just started directing, so I felt, I felt fancy. You know what I mean? Like I went through my lofty phase. It was pretty fast, but I had it.
I know who you are. I know who you are. So every time Scott Elliott like entered the gym, I was like, oh God, I gotta hit him up for a job.
Well, and that was so funny when you introduced yourself. You were so charming. And then how did you end up in? I remember you in my office, but was that on one arm? Or because that wasn't one arm the first.
One arm, yeah, it was one arm. Years later, I don't know. That was my first show with the new group. Yeah,
that was your first show. I remember it vividly. Then we did Burning, because then we did Burning together right after that.
Yeah, Burning.
Oh, me too. I think if we brought that show back today, it would be like amazing. It was ahead of its time in certain ways.
Ahead of its time.
It was such a
brave.
Yeah, bold. It was so.
These words are so dangerous nowadays when I say that, but like I have to say, like it was really bold. Like we did shit then that like I remember the shit that Hunter Foster did on stage, and I remember talking to
all those guys.
Yeah, and then Sutton and I were talking when we did Sweet Charity, and I'm like, do you remember when Hunter? And she was like, oh my God, like I literally could not believe what was happening. And that's her like little brother. I mean, older brother.
I know. I mean, like, talk about brave. That guy, like, when he came in, he was so he just wanted to be in it.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was pretty frank with everybody, as I always am, about what might happen.
yeah,
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 that show still, I think about it, blows my mind. I think it would make a good movie too.
yeah,
There's just something about that show and this moment in a weird way that
yeah,
just feels so incredible to me.
yeah.
It remains one of my favorite shows. But anyway, but we met on One Arm, which I loved what you did on that show, and I think that's why. And then you showed up, and I was like, oh my God, it's the guy from the gym. I've had that on a couple of occasions where I've met people that I've seen a million times before, and then they end up on something. Which is really funny. Yeah, and then I just was really always, well, as you can say, I felt like we spoke a similar language from the beginning, which is really, and I always try to get you on almost every one of my shows, but you only do some of them. But
That's a dig, folks, for everybody.
it's not a dig, a little dig. No, no, no. But no, listen, you have to work with other people too. I know how it is. But I feel like, I was looking back on our list of things that we've done together. We've done some really fun things with some really fun people.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah, so much fun. And I've always sort of felt the freedom to actually do the work in a very organic manner. So I've appreciated that. I was just like thinking, going back to Burning. I just finished, not finished. I'm watching I May Destroy You right now. Have you been watching it on HBO?
No, but I want to. That's the abuse show, right? It's like, what is
Well,
it?
yeah, it deals with a lot of things, but it is
Yeah.
about that. But it's this English. I think she's Ghanaian English actress, writer, producer, director, and it's fantastic. And it reminds me of the stuff that we did on Thomas's play. So you should see it. It's
What's it called? I Will Destroy You.
What?
I'm gonna watch. I Will Destroy You. It's called.
I May Destroy You.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
I've sort of given up. I've given up on trying to find shows to watch, interestingly enough, because I would go through the shows and I would just look at the titles and not be able to decide, and then just not.
Right.
Unless I get a straw, but this sounds good. I'm going to check it out. But yeah, no, but like that was a fun show for us to sort of cut our teeth on together. But
Yeah.
then we went on to do some really interesting stuff with some interesting people. I mean,
Yeah.
I always love the way that you work, with actors. I mean, especially actors who've been around and who've like done a lot of stuff, and how you manage to make everybody feel so comfortable, which obviously is one of the what we try to do at the new group. We're not
Right.
always successful, but like that's what we always try to make everybody feel like they're getting everything that we can possibly give, and to make people feel expressive in every category. But you always seem to really win over the trust of some of the I would say more complicated people. and what is it like? What goes into your collaboration with actors?
Well, I really feel like I think a lot of that is just listening to them, but also I think it also starts with a director like you sort of giving. I think they sense that there's a sense that that I'm free to explore anything with them, and I think it begins there. I also feel like it's really listening to them, listening to the actors, and especially on plays. I think a lot of the plays that we worked on are difficult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or challenging, because it
Yeah.
really deals with like a lot of darknesses, like like Burning. It was about race and sex, and and we've done a lot of dark shows, but like I think part of it is it's like it's really dealing with their safety, and that's tantamount, uh, uh, I think that sort of is the beginning of the conversation, and just like really honestly being an advocate for their bodies, because their bodies are literally the method of transmission of the storytelling, right? And so if you don't even consider their body and what their relationship to their body is, and what society's relationship to their body is, then like at the gate, you know. But also I feel like a lot of it too is that, at least in with the shows that we've done together, you know, there is a sense that actors are so porous, right? Like actors are also can sense, like they can sense shit. So I feel like if the actors feel like you're not being 100% authentic with them, that, you know, that you're not literally, that you're going to them and they understand that another situation is happening out there that may not resemble the situation you're presenting with them, you know, I think that they can tell. So I think it's also about creating really a safe environment where people are having civilized dialogue about difficult things, you know what I mean? So as much as like sometimes you want to cuss out like anybody, you can't, because you really want to make it safe for them, you know. You whatever's happening in the production area, you know, I think they need to be aware of that, but like they also need to know that it's being handled, you know what I mean? So I don't know, that was a long-winded answer, but that's
Not really.
that's the idea.
No, I think it's really compelling because you've managed to make people, I mean, at least in the work that we've done together, because I can only speak about that, but I mean, I've seen some of your more, you know, glamorous stuff too, which we can talk about after. But in the stuff that we've done together, you know, you've managed to make people feel comfortable enough to be able to sort of, you know, not look their best.
That's right. That's
but
right.
not in a fake way. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not like, you know, with, you know, but in a real way, and like to like, you know, and so what sort of, I mean, I guess it's all of us together creating a safe environment. But what goes into a conversation like that? Like what goes into a conversation about, like, I mean, you can't just probably say, hey, put this on, you're not going to look good. How do you brush that? Because there's a sensitivity that you have obviously as a human being, but
Yeah.
like, you know, in your work, because you also manage to keep things light, and I know you will, you also manage to sometimes get frustrated, you
Yeah.
know, and so like how do you broach these things and make people sort of look their worst?
So thank you for asking that, because that's literally like what uh, uh, to me is like the hardest conversation, but it's also like the funnest conversation, you know. So like I think it's like really knowing the what the vision is for the show, knowing the show, right, and then doing the right research, you know, for it, and then showing them the sort of real archetypes of what these, you know, these characters may have looked like, and then you just kind of like gauge how far they want to go, you know. Like I think, for instance, when we did The True, um, you know, we were also lucky that like Edie Falco is um, just like endlessly generous and also unbelievably kind and also a brilliant artist. So, you know, when we went through all of those, you know, 1970s polyester dresses, each time we put something on, she'd be like, ugly as fuck, I love it. Ugly as fuck, I love it. So, you know, there was this openness, you know what I mean? Because she knew that it, like, to get to something deeper, we have to, like, you know, take care of the artifice and kind of like break that down. And then there are just, I feel like a lot of the actors, you know, that we've work with are just intelligent actors who are absolutely smart, you know, that it's they understand, like, you know, um from Sutton to Edie, you know, to everybody.
Well, Sutton's costume was controversial.
It was
You know,
very
it
so
was one of my favorite costumes
I
ever.
know it was
Like when
Lee.
I know Lee Silverman, I just thought like that whole show, like it took on some sort of weird controversy that I never saw coming.
I
Do you know
know.
what I mean?
I
Because
would
I was like,
love to just like unpack that, like, because, you know, like we're okay. So real talk, we're talking
Yeah,
about taxi dancers here, right? And when you really
exactly.
do the research, they're basically hookers. Not basically, they're hookers, right?
They're
And so
hookers.
like that's
Charity's a hooker.
a hooker, right? And so when you look at it, right, when you look at it, this is, and you do all of the research, you have to look at the giant spectrum of what New York looked like at that time. You know what I mean? And so it was all based on research. Like we had like real research, and so to me, it was all of the clowning, all of the sort of the stuff that Charity does is to cover up a deep wound, and so where's that, if that wound is not obvious, if there is not a sense of weariness to her, then it doesn't make any sense. And I think Sutton even said, let's really look at what she would have looked like at that time, and that's it, and that's it. And but then you go through sort of like conversations with people where like people are asking you these crazy questions of like, I don't know if I would date Charity, like, but
Right. I'll tell you that some people who are intimate with Sutton in her life, not her husband, of course, but
right.
like some people who are in her life came at me like after it was either the dress rehearsal or the first preview, and they were like, "You're not going to let her go out there like that." They said to me, and I was like, "Huh, yes."
Yes.
Like I was like, I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? It was sort of like this thing. Oh, you're not going to leave her in that wig. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I guess a lot of people felt that way, and I found it really offensive actually, because
Yeah.
there was something about that show and like what Lee did and what you guys all did that was just really, I don't know. I found it was one of my favorite shows we ever did.
Yeah, and yes, a lot of people felt that, but they were very vocal. But there were also, to me, more people, especially women, who were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, the
Blew
men
my
were the ones
mind.
that, yeah,
Blew my fucking mind. And that was
right,
what Lee was trying to do, was like really dismantle this idea of like, like this fake hooker. Like, no,
right.
this is, every time
That
she tried,
dress was the most amazing thing. It
and it's
was like
based on
really the
research.
best. It was the best dress. It was perfect. I remember when I first saw her, in the whole look, in the show, really, I was like, God, that is the best thing she's ever done. Like there was something, I mean, I'm a fan of hers, but it just blew my mind what she did. And I guess some of our male friends didn't agree. I mean, let's not get into sex.
Straight
Let's
male.
not get into sexism and
I
racism
know.
now, too. We
Let's,
only have like 15
I
minutes,
know. I
so
know.
we'll do another one.
When people of power say, "Oh, but I don't know if I'll date her," I'm like, "Who asked you to date her?
Exactly.
She's a character.
She's an actress.
Sorry, her purpose on that stage is not for you to date her. Like, what are you talking about? Get out of
I
here."
know. I loved all those girls in that show. Asmerette. I love that
Oh
show.
my God,
That was the
great.
greatest cast, and the guys too. The whole cast was
The
just such
whole
a
cast
wonderful cast.
and
It
Joelle.
was
Oh,
amazing,
you know.
amazing. Um, yeah, and then so tell of course I know you, so I know your story. So tell us how you found yourself. I'm going back as a costume designer, and like what inspired you, and here and NYU and all of your collaborations, to get you to where you are. But like, what inspired you, and tell us a bit of your story in
Yeah,
5 minutes.
I'm from the Philippines originally, like and my background is that I wasn't meant to be in the theater. I don't know if you know Imelda Marcos, but she like literally, she had this program where she would pluck all of these kids from all over the country. She would test them, right? And then she would like pull the top testers, and then she would like plant them in boarding schools in the capital, like some for the arts, some for the sciences and humanities. And I fell into the sciences. That's where I like landed. But I had like this amazing drama teacher who was like, hey, who's like off school, he would be doing these protest performances against the Marcoses. He was working in basically an institution that was that was run by the Marcoses, but he was protesting. And and he said to me, in my second year, he said, "You want to come and join us?" And that was it. I fell in love with the whole thing. It was like an amazing like experience. I saw how, and this was like short 10 to 12 minute performances we would do like in like plazas or like where there would be crowds, right? And it would be that short because the cops would come and disperse you with water cannons. So it needed to be that short. My job was to hold this red flag so everybody know, like it was a really small flag. Everybody knew where to converge, and then they would do these allegorical pieces, and then we would go away. It was like a crowd. What do you call that crowd? Oh God, I'm getting old. But like that thing where they feel, and then they go away. So that was it. I was hooked. I was hooked from then on, and I only wanted to be in the theater. I wanted to be a director at first, but I knew that I didn't have that facility to like. I just didn't have that facility to like really, in a way, dig deep and live within an actor's psyche. I didn't have that. I wanted that, but I wanted it part-time, right? And so I think that's sort of like what led me to design. And then I fell in love with the idea that I actually can control a lot of things by setting up where the thing is set and what the inhabitants of that play look like. And so, and that brought me to New York. There was a visiting professor at my school in the Philippines and said, if you want to go to, if you want to practice in the States, you should go to these schools, and I went to New York. I bummed around for a little bit, about 3 years, and I went to NYU, and then I got out, and then it was a rocky road, because I didn't know what was going on. But listen, I'm like this brown person, right? Like this brown kid from the Philippines. You go into grad school, you're literally, you knew about like racism and colonialism and all that kind of stuff, but I was living in a homogenous society. You go into grad school, which by the way, doesn't prepare you for the shit that's out there. And then you jump into the workforce and all of a sudden like, oh, fuck, like you have contemporaries that just like who's being offered all these shows because they can do the most amount of shows, but I was being asked, when I was asked, which is few and frequent, to do this particular kind of shows. And so all of that, but I've had like great advocates, including you, but like really great advocates and mentors and a lot of people of color like really buttressing me up, when there was no work. You know what I mean? When there was
That's so interesting to me, because I just always imagine, I never experienced that through you until hearing about it really most recently. I just imagined you as like that well, of course, maybe you were just saying no to my shows because you didn't want to do them, but like, it just seemed like you were, I'm kidding, but but you always seemed like you were like the busiest costume designer around, and I wasn't even thinking about how you could be getting certain kinds of shows because of the color of your skin. Like, it just never. I mean, I'm laughing about it. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy, but like, I just can't believe it. Seems absurd, actually, and like, I just never saw you, because to me you were always a star. So like, I didn't, but I guess there was a world before I knew you that you were going through this, or maybe while I knew you.
Yeah. I always listen, like I mean, and this is what, every BIPOC artist goes through, you know what I mean? And
well, I'm learning it more and more.
Yeah. And
yeah. I thought I knew it.
Right. And to a large extent, a lot of us get anointed, right? And so, not a lot, some of us.
But white people too. Everybody. This is an anointing business.
Right.
I'm not saying that there's. I'm not saying that. Of course, there's more white people. That's the thing. But there is an anointing process. It's sad in this business. But right. Yeah, go ahead.
So my part in that, and I have a large complicity in upholding the system, is that for some of us, designers of color who are established, we basically fill that thing, we essentially become tokenized, right? We become
right.
And these institutions, most PWI, predominantly white institutions, say, listen, we're doing the work. Look, Clint is here. So and so is here. Blah 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 is here.
Right.
And then say, that's it. But clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So to a certain extent, yes, a lot of it is this system, and a lot of it is how we've been funneled through it. You know what I mean? And to me, I think part of I try to imagine what my trajectory would have been if I didn't have to go through this kind of like circuitous system. You know what I mean? So for instance, for me to invite white directors early in my career, for me to invite white directors to my shows, I needed shows, right? I needed shows. I needed to design shows. And
right.
Early on, the shows that I designed, and the people who said, "Oh, you can come and design these things," were people of color. You know what I mean? And so then I could invite directors to these shows. So it was really based on that. But then the perpetuating thing there is then they see, oh gosh, that's the work. That's the type of work you can do. That's the type of work you are doing, and that's the type of work. And there's always this assumption, right? And so you rarely get asked to do Chekhov or Shakespeare unless it's diverse. You know what I mean? So it's really these sort of self-perpetuating things. And then when you break through, when you're like doing things, you're the only one in these rooms. You know what I mean? So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, to hear your side of it, because how high I hold you in esteem, but it's just interesting to hear your struggles. Your sort of, that you yourself, Clint, had these moments as well. Because I just, it's funny, but I feel like when we met, it was sort of before people were even thinking along these lines. Do you know what I mean? There just wasn't this thought, and so it was interesting to hear it from you.
Yeah, at least white folk are talking about it right now, right? And so a lot of but this conversation has been happening for a long time, and I'm looking at like young BIPOC designers into their faces, and I'm looking at the questions that they have of me, and not how did you make it, yes, all of that, like what did you have to do, all of this kind of stuff. And I can't help but look at the things that I needed to do to get to where I am, which included a lot of complicity to the system, but yeah, it's
yeah, but you are in a very interesting position in that you are the head of a design department, of an esteemed design department at Fordham, and so you can. I mean, it's funny, but you can help. Well, as complicit as you might have been, you can make up for it now. You know what I mean? And I think that there's a lot.
Yeah, it's not like I have no shame about it. You know what I mean? For me, it's like the way we hustled. It was the way all of us, and if you ask, designers of color in my generation, that's the way we hustled. And to a certain extent, this new reckoning right now is actually confronting us with our own existence. Like it's literally asking us, the hard questions. But in terms of me being the head of the design track at Fordham, it's still a lot of work, because I still need to get young people in there. And when you're talking about how you train young designers of color, you really need to go all the way back to like high school. You need to go and it's like really ask, like, why do we have to go to design school? Why do we, all of this, like, and also talking to their parents, trying to convince these parents that, hey, your child can, because your child is talented in the arts, they don't have to, they can have a viable career in the theater, right? But that promise comes with like a lot of work, So it's a lot of things, and a lot of it has to do with money and access, because if we want more designers of color, then we need to do a lot more.
Invest in it, right? You have to
Correct.
invest in it.
Getting
It's
them
moving.
right.
It's very moving. I was telling you a little bit before that we had just started our first BFA conservatory at LIU, and there is
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, of course, I don't do it, but I love it. You know what I mean? But Ian does. Ian and Juan Carlos and our educators. But it's been really interesting because I didn't realize just how you do have to get in with the parents, and you do have to like sort of get in there and explain the why. I mean, our program obviously is quite a our first class was amazing. The kids were amazing. I couldn't believe how good they were. But it's just even though it's not expensive, it's expensive. And there's all the other stuff that goes along with it. And you really do it's interesting how the interaction between the educator and the parents and the arts. That's another thing that I wasn't aware of, or at least now. So how far do you go in that? Like, do you meet with parents? Do you?
Yeah, you do outreach. Fordham right now is working really hard to do that. It's not where it should be, but it's the conversation is happening, and
Yeah, we're doing that too, like constant outreach, I guess. But go ahead, I want to hear more.
Yeah, no, it's really outreach to these communities. So it's a multi-pronged problem because like I think part of the idea, for me at least, it's not to silo these young students of color, right? Like, it's also, aside from wanting, yes, to create the new, wave of designers of color, but you also want board members of color. You want administrators of color. You want,
Of course.
we want to create this whole ecosystem where it looks like New York City, And so I think part of what we really need to do is expose people who are in the field, who are already working, like Union One. Sadly, there's not a lot of Union One people, like literally for people who are considering vocational careers,
Right, yeah.
On Broadway, earning a ton shit of money, in Union One. But then we have to ask, what are the hiring practices of Union One? What are the systems where it actually opens up for people?
Isn't that one of the ones where you have to I don't know what to get in? It's like you can't get in, right? It's really yeah. Oh, so like
why?
yeah.
So
I don't know why. Do you know?
Exactly.
Does anybody know?
Well, it's shrouded, right? So these are all the things that I think we take for granted. For instance, when we hire like carpenters or scenic painters or anything in production departments, just removing the educational requirement opens it up to a lot more people. Why does, for instance, a welder at a scene shop need an MFA?
I never thought about that. I didn't think welders at scene shops had MFAs. This is so interesting. I understand what you're saying.
It's set up.
It's like you could go to Yale. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yale
exactly.
opens the door. Yeah.
10 out of 12, Scott. Let's not even talk about 10 out of 12s, because 10 out of 12 is the most oppressive system,
Oh, you hate 10 out of 12s.
Oh, it's detrimental.
Oh yeah, explain.
Well, we all know that it's oppressive to a lot of people, right? But because I'm advocating for BIPOC, when you're really talking about 10 out of 12, it disrupts the family structure. And for most people of color, the family structure is the source of support because of the dearth of support for people of color, right? You're talking about, they need the family is the financial, emotional, and spiritual support for these people, right? So for us, basically. And so when you're saying 10 out of 12, how are you supposed to raise a family? How are you supposed to participate in a family? Now let's go even deeper into the people of color. When you're talking to like indigenous and native artists, people recovering from genocide, and you're telling them not to have a family, what does that do? I'm not saying that 10 out of 12 is not oppressive to white people. It is. But can you imagine what it does to people of color is what I'm saying.
I think it's so interesting that, it's funny hearing you say this. Like, how long have I been in this business? 25 years. And I think about it, and I have never heard that. Like, nobody has ever said to me, God, I hate 10 out of 12s. It's just so, but it's not even you, I don't think. But I guess you just have to do it. You have no choice. That's just the way the system
that is right. But
yeah. I mean, I would like to go to. I would like to go home at 8 o'clock too.
Yeah, when you're the one of two black people in the show, right? That's all predominantly white, and what are you gonna say? I don't want to do 10 out of 12. You know what I mean? Like, it's not set up. So we have to look at all of these practices, and I know that we as a community can actually look at that and still figure out a way to make it. They don't do it, like in England, for instance.
I love the schedule in England. It's my favorite schedule.
We do that here,
But the thing is that like, okay, so I don't want to take up too much time with the story, but when you work in England, it's like the crew works overnight, so everything is done. So it was so interesting. You come in and you don't have to wait for anything.
Right,
everything is always done
during the day. So basically, and that crew doesn't work during the day.
Right, they work all night. Right,
they work all night, and they probably get paid all right money, and they probably, you know what I mean? It's probably not overtime and all that kind of stuff.
But I'm sure it's not as good as Union One. It's not that kind of money.
Like, listen, I'm sure they understand what this is. You know what I mean?
I bet they do. But then, what if you said to them, "Oh, you have to work all night long, so we can work during the day?" I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I love working in England. It's the best schedule, and I love the way.
I'm telling you that a lot of, like, including the public, are really looking at their 10 out of 12 practices. If COVID didn't happen, Ruth Sternberg at the public would have implemented already a non-10 out of 12 schedule. So I think.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it can be done. Stephanie Ibarra at Baltimore Center Stage has instituted it, and it is.
Oh, I'm sure it can be done. Well, I'm a follower, so I'm happy to look at whatever other people are doing and do that, because I agree.
The new group could literally lead the way here in Off-Broadway.
You have to help me, because I have to have an understanding of it. I'm totally open to it. Oh, I know you will.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you will. I'm not done with you. No, I've got several things that I'm going to be hitting you up for, but not on this conversation. But no, I know, because it's interesting to think about the structure of the work and how that goes. Okay, we only have a couple more minutes in this thing, and I want to just talk for 1 second. I mean, we have I didn't touch on half the things. I hope we had, but maybe we'll do another one at another time. But tell me about, I'm just so curious, because I didn't even know you were working on that Aretha Franklin movie. And then the next thing I know, I was like, look how cool those clothes are. And I looked at it, and I looked you up, and it was you. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, when did that all happen? Like, you haven't done, is that your first movie? Is that
it was my first non-independent movie. It was my first
right. Hollywood movie.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because my good friend Liesl Tommy was directing it, and my good friend,
Liesl, yes,
Tracy Scott Wilson, who I think you also know, wrote it. And so they were kind enough to bring me on the ride. And
you're not even a woman.
Oh, because they're both women? Well, no, we've been
no, I'm just kidding. It's like,
we've been close collaborators for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think part of my journey towards Aretha was through these two amazing women of color, and so it was unbelievable. Working with Jennifer Hudson was unbelievable, and I worked really hard to get those clothes right, because the queen needed to be correct, and you
had and your budget was good, I'm sure, because for something like that. So was that easy or was that hard? How did you find it compared to like indies and theater?
You have more money because you're in a movie, but like, I think it's directly proportional. It is. I mean, a dress costs the same way. It is the same amount to a dress for Broadway is the same amount as a dress for the movies. You know what I mean?
Right.
Movies, like, she had 80 changes, so we need to make 80 costumes. You know what I mean? And then you have like church scenes with 1,000 people in there, and you have to dress them in 1950s or 60s clothing. And so it's really just about, like, a dress costs this much. Let's just multiply it by how many we need. And then, then the labor force also does that. But it was a life-changing experience. When
did you shoot that?
We shot it in the last fall. We shot it in New York and in Atlanta. And we shot it for 4 months, something like that. Yeah. It's
Wow.
epic.
I'm so happy for you. I'm really excited to see you, spread your wings. I knew you when. I think I texted you, don't forget the little people.
I hated that text.
I can only do it to somebody like you.
I know,
Clint.
I know.
Only you. I love you. I'm your biggest fan. All right, listen. So this part of our conversation is finished. We're going to get together in 5 minutes on Zoom, and we're going to do a Q&A with some people who paid a little money to come and support the new group. And thank you so much for doing this, Clint. Having you here, it's meant a lot.
Talking about that stuff, like that's amazing. Thank you. I think.
You and I are old friends. I support everything that you think because I think you're brilliant.
Thank
you. Anyway, okay. So we'll see each other in 5 minutes. Thanks for coming, everybody. Tune into the Spoils Climate Series readings tonight, tomorrow. The Spoils, July 30th, next week. Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week for Malik.